Alrighty. So today, another active learning lunch, which is very cool. So we've got an hour today learning about photography. So learning about how to tell the story of your photographs, how to do all different sorts of things so that when it comes to Instagram, when it comes to your website, when it comes to the QSEC Good Giving Guide, which is coming up again, then there's lots of ways to actually make your images pop. And again, it doesn't have to be a product that you're selling. I don't sell products as Empathy First, but I do take photos of like my workbooks, and I take pictures of my desk when it's presentable. So let's get this show on the road. I've got so many things on this screen. All right, as always, we do acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which QSEC stands, and we pay respects to the elders, customs, and creation spirits wherever you are and wherever we're gathering across Queensland and Australia today. And we always acknowledge the important role Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people play within the QSEC community. Now, the reason I put this up is my name's Leanne Butterworth. For those of you who know me, don't know me, whatever, I'm Learning and Development Specialist here at QSEC. I lecture and tutor social enterprise business at Queensland University of Technology. Someone's barking at me. And also I'm founder of Empathy First, which is a certified social enterprise. And the reason I put this lovely photo up, because Renee, who's talking to you today, took this lovely photo. So look at that photo. Don't look at how I look today. But yeah, Renee took this beautiful photo of me, and I show it everywhere because I love it. It was such a good day. So Renee did that photo. So QSEC, for those of you who don't know, we are a member organisation. So all of our funding comes from either the government or your membership. So we exist to serve our members. This active learning lunch is part of our, I guess, learning and development process, because what we want to do is we want to help our social enterprises grow. So we do have lots of different things that we learn and teach and have, and resources and regions and all that good stuff. Now, coming up, we have a heap of QSEC events. So 16th of August, there's an industry forum down on the Gold Coast. 19th of August, there's a reimagining Brisbane as a regenerative city. 23rd of August, active learning lunch. So this is our next active learning lunch, keeping your social enterprise cyber safe. That's with Tech for Good. And that will include a tour of the website after it. So 12:30 to 1:30 is the webinar, and then 1:30 we'll do another tour of the website. 24th in Toowoomba, we've got Marketing Your Story. Rachel Whitworth is running that one. 8th of September, up in Mackay, a social enterprise workshop. 16th of September, which is my birthday, social enterprise workshop in Gladstone. 26th through the 29th, which is that week, we've got the Social Enterprise World Forum here in Brisbane. And then on the 7th of October, we've got the Social Enterprise Workshop, Rockhampton. Now, hitting your inboxes over the next week or so will be the QSEC annual survey. All right, so please, 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 if you're a social enterprise member of QSEC, you will receive the annual survey. Please spend 5-10 minutes filling that out. It's really important that we get as much information as we can about what's happening in the sector, what's happening for our members, and how we can grow and develop for 2023. If you aren't a member and you would like to join, whether you're a social enterprise yourself or you support social enterprise, you can join at QSEC_friends. That's the code you can put in to get 50% off your first year of membership. Alrighty, so I'm going to stop sharing now. So I'm having some issues in the waiting room, but that's fine. So long as everybody is on mute, that would be great. So today's active learning lunch is with Renee Shea, all about how to take better photographs for use on your website, for Instagram, for the Good Giving Guide. And I'm going to hand over to Renee.
And I am going to unmute myself. How is everybody today? While I'm just briefly going to get my presentation up so that you can all see how that is looking.
All good?
It's coming.
Okay, cool. But yeah, we are doing, keep the chat open today, guys. Keep the chat open because we are going to use the chat today. All right, figure.
Sorry. Promise you this will happen.
Always the way. I'll put hold
Yeah.
music.
Be my hold music. Why is it?
Make sure everybody's got the chat. Where's the chat? Yeah, chatty chat. Aha, there's the chat. So if anybody wants to, if you've got any questions to start with.
Okay, so let me just talk to get started.
While you're
I am hopefully I think everything should be coming up now. It's coming. Is that a little bit better? Excellent. Okay, and I'm just going to move this dialog box out of the way. So hello and welcome. Thank you, Leanne, for your lovely introduction. And I'm really excited to be here today to talk with you about photographing your products, particularly products and services that are for purpose. So there is a lot to cover in this topic. And so I'm going to be picking little bits and pieces out of the conversation or out of this whole big topic and sharing them with you today. What I would really appreciate is if you could drop as many questions and comments as you can into the chat box, because that's where I'm going to try and come back to it and answer them as we go. And at the end, I'll open up the session to like a general questions so that you can ask me anything that you are interested in. Now, given how long it took me, here we go. There we go. So I am Renee, and as Leanne introduced herself, she showed the photograph that I took of her when we worked together on some personal branding images. So I am a personal branding coach. I train in personal branding, and I also photograph for personal brands. I started my work back as a photographer and focusing really on photography for brands who are trying to build and share their story on social media. So that's kind of where my background came from. And then through time, I started to evolve and focus on businesses and brands that really had a for purpose focus. So it became very much about understanding what it is to have a purpose-based business. And to understand what the impact is that you're trying to make in your work, and then learning and crafting stories, particularly visual stories, to help share that with a broader audience. Because the more that we can share the story of our impact and share the story of the work that we're doing, the greater the impact can be. So that's the premise, and that's how and why I'm doing what I'm doing. And so this part of it, the component here about understanding and photographing products, is part of that picture. Now, I just quickly today, this is what we're going to talk about. And I wanted to be very, I could literally talk about this kind of stuff for a really, really long time. And I kind of went backwards and forwards with Leanne about talk about what it is that we might want to cover. So what I've come to is a bit of an overview about why imagery is important, because it's one of those components of marketing that is oftentimes left as an afterthought, whereas imagery has a lot of importance to play in selling a message and selling an emotion in a story. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to really have a chat about what the story is that you're trying to share as part of your imagery and as part of your marketing, and then why that's important and how we do that. So there's a couple of little activities that we'll get to do in there. Hopefully we'll get time to do them together online. Otherwise, they're ones that I would recommend that you come back to at a later date. We're going to look at how we add your brand, so what you've already been working hard to establish, into the photos that you're taking so that they are all consistent. because in this kind of space, consistency is really important because it helps to build the trust with your audience, wherever that is, in whatever channel that you're communicating. It helps to build the trust that goes along with the photos and goes along with the images and the stories. So they kind of all come together. And then the last section that we're going to look at, and I'm going to look at this really quickly, is about tips to take good photos with your mobile phone. Now, there was two ways that we could have gone with this session today, and that was very much a photography session, or very much about the understanding and positioning the photographs that you take and share so that you can get more bang for your buck, no matter how you actually get those photos taken, whether you do it yourself or whether you pay somebody else to do it. So what we're going to do is go through that whole planning process today to make sure that the photos that you are taking are exactly what you need, and do what you need to do. And then I'm also providing some tips and guidance at the end about how you can better take those photos yourself. So it's like getting the foundations right. And then the photo part at the end is kind of like, it's not the added extra because that's clearly why we're here, but it's a core part of the added on section. I'm completely stuffed up what I said then, but you know what I'm talking about. But as always, at the end, we will have a question time, because I think that's going to be part of the really valuable component of how you're going to get to understand how this stuff relates to your business. Because as Leanne mentioned, not everybody here, including myself, we're not necessarily product-based businesses. And sometimes it can get a bit tricky to understand how we can take this knowledge or how we can take this channel, this visual communication channel, and make it really work for us, particularly on all of the platforms that we need to be in all of the places. So we'll have a good chat at the end about some of those things, about how we can make it applicable for you and in your context. So before we want to kick off, this is basically the point, right? Why are we focusing on images? And that is because, like I say, photographs are part of your marketing collateral. They're part of the overall expression of your business. They are an important part in selling your products and services. You use photographs in so many places. And as I'm sure we all know, with the world being such an online-driven marketplace, there is endless channels, right, where we want to share these photos. And the very core, or the example that we're starting with today, is with the Good Giving Guide, because it's something that we're all familiar with. And it's a practical tool that's going to help you with your business, particularly those that are here that are products. But the tools and tips are going to be so relatable across a whole range of different contexts. I really liked the quote here that we've got from Dr. Burmack. It's about the words and concepts and ideas. It's basically saying that they just go straight from one ear to the other unless they're attached to an image, right? And that's the idea of consistency and being intentional in your messaging. Because when we can get all of those things together, the words, the concepts, the ideas, and attach them to imagery, then we can have a much more powerful message. Because 93% of communication is nonverbal. There's been studies, particularly by 3M, that look at the way that visuals, so imagery, is processed like what got there 60,000 times faster than text. So you could write an amazing product description, or you could write an amazing blog post or caption, but it's not going to have anywhere near as much of an impact on creating your user to actually act or do something if the imagery doesn't sit with it. You can have, it's why the whole phrase, a picture tells 1,000 words, exists, right? We as humans are processed with our brain-eye connections to process imagery. Sorry, I should say color is the fastest thing we process, and faces to see whether there's danger in our circumstance. And we process all of these way more, instinctively than the cognitive process that we go through when we're actually reading and thinking about the text. So if we are in a world, as we are, where we're scrolling through social media or we're flipping through a document or a guide, the imagery that comes up is way more impactful on making us stop and look and pay attention to something than any of the words around it. What we've also found is that images will engage emotions, and emotions influence decision making. So when we're looking at something like the Giving Guide, where we're looking at trying to sell a product or encourage somebody to engage with the story of a product or the story of a service, imagery is one of the core ways that we can do that by tapping into emotion. I know, I'm just going to get this out right. I talk really fast. So I'm hoping that I don't lose anybody, but if I do, just kind of make a comment or something and somebody will tell me. But hopefully this is the how I roll as a general rule, is talking this fast. Thank you, Helen. Okay. So, oops, that one went the wrong way, didn't it? Let's get this chat box out of the way. So, if your photos are as important as everything that we've been saying here so far, we need to be really careful and looking at what your photos are actually saying now, or what your photos and the story that your photos are sharing are saying. So what I wanted to do is I'm just going to see if I can bring that chat box back up. Over the next 3 slides, we're going to look at 3 different images. Right, these are all images of coffee because that's how I survive life, right? And we're going to look at the different images and see how they can be portrayed and shared in so many different ways. So this first image, we can see here, or rather, I'd love it if you could tell me, and popping it into the content, into the what's the word, chat box, or even unmuting yourself briefly just to let us know what kind of emotions or adjectives does this particular photo of coffee resonate with you. We've got a nurturing, we've got chilled, warmth, seasonality, yes, awesome, grounding. I love it. Calming, yeah, exactly. And I like the wild because there is definitely an element of earthiness in there too, isn't there? It's if you were to picture yourself in this scene with this particular little scenario here, how would you feel yourself? Yep. Comforted, good, impressed, snuggly, away from busy life. Excellent. Excellent. Relaxed, warm, fabulous. Okay. Now, keeping that in mind, okay, we're going to flip to a different image. Now, this image is of coffee as well. So I'd love for you to do the same and share with me what's some of the mood, the emotions, the adjectives that come out for this one. Yeah, we've got vibrancy, we've got rushing to a meeting, exactly, coffee on the go, waking up, yep, in a hurry, exactly, right? So it's the same product, it's the same content in the photo, but the vibe, the story that it's sharing is quite different to the one before. And it's important to feel the difference. Now this next one, let's do the same here. This is kind of where I want to be right now. How does this coffee photo make you feel? Adventure, yep. Happy, messy, off-grid. Yes, exactly. Exactly. It's a really interesting way, even if we just flip back, let's see if I can make it go back. So we've got the fast, we've got the vibrant, we've got the going to work, right? We've got the warm, snuggly, cozy, being looked after, almost that nurturing kind of vibe. And then we've got the other here that is all about action, and it's about, not action, but it's about adventure, I should say. It's about freedom. It creates a different emotion within you. Now, which one would you like to buy? Like, which one do you think, 1, 2, or 3, appeals to you the most? And there's nothing wrong with this, right? Yep, number ones, number threes, exactly. And when you look at the photos and you look at the feelings that they create within you, they create a desire or a call to action, right? And the way that they're doing this is through the story of where the image is, right? And I'm not just talking about like this one is out in the countryside, right? It's about putting the product. And this works for, like Leanne was talking before about, you know, taking photos of her notebooks at the workshops. As a coffee drinker myself, I'll often have photos of coffee in my Instagram feed. And so there's a whole range of different scenarios that we interact with, and the setting around the product itself is what actually is encouraging. It's what generates that emotion. It's not just the product itself. Now, why does this become important? Let me flick to the next one. Let's have a quick, getting rid of this checkbox for a second, just so I can see. Okay, so what is the story about your offer? Now, we are in some way either all impact-based businesses or associated with creating an impact with our business. So at the get-go, we already come from a position where there is story associated with our offer. So whether it is about how it's made, it's about the impact that you want the product or service to have in the world, whether it's what was the reason why the product came to fruition. There's a whole lot of reasons why your business exists and why it's trying to do what it's doing. And this is the existing story that we want to include into the photo or series of photos, right? So our first activity, and like I say, we may not necessarily get a chance to get, you know, into the nitty-gritty of it right now, but these are the kinds of questions that I would really encourage you to have a think about. And I would love, given that how everyone was so responsive in the chat box before, as you look at these questions and you think about your product or service, what are some of the stories that you can think of that might relate to your product? It's going to be all over the place because we've all got different products and services, but I just want to try and get a bit of an idea to see and confirm that everyone kind of gets the hang of what I'm trying to say with this part of the story component. So thinking about what you're offering, whether it's a product or a service, what do you want people to know about that product or service? For those of you who do have a product that might go into the Good Giving Guide, what do you want the people who are looking at that product to know about your product? Yep. So we've got that the product is supportive, caring, compassionate. We want to know that Leanne's work is accessible and interactive. And these things, right, are perfect. And they exist outside of the actual content, right? They exist outside of whatever is in the photo. Excuse me. And these are valuable words to keep in mind when you're thinking about what is the photo, and we'll get to it, but what the photograph itself is actually going to be. So no matter what Barbara puts in her imagery, right, we want it to come through with a sense of being supportive or being caring and compassionate, right? Excellent, excellent. And thanks, Ainsley. So at the Nest, we have an op shop haberdashery. We want customers to know that the products are donated, have history, and are pre-loved by other people, which is perfect, right? So there is a story behind what we're trying to share. So as you can see, if you think about whatever your product is, and if you don't have a product and you have a service, Just for example, like for the sake of this activity, I would encourage you to just pick something, whether it is a notebook, whether it is a coffee cup, pick something that might be a regular thing in your life, and think about these questions in relation to that. So as an example, for me, my coffee, right? I want people to know that coffee is a part of my brand or is a part of my story, because when we interact on the phone or on our coaching calls, or when I'm at a workshop, or when I'm at a shoot, I am likely to offer them a coffee. I'm likely to say, let's meet over a coffee. It's part of who I am and how I show up. So that's kind of why I want to incorporate it into my story and the brand story. Can I get a series of thumbs up or yeses just to make sure that folks are following along? Yep. Awesome. Excellent. So this, and when we talk about marketing and we're talking about these photographs being a part of your collateral or a part of your marketing, these are very, not common, but these are the kinds of things that you'd be thinking about with your copy, with your, what you might put on your website. So they're not unusual factors for you. They're things that I'm sure most of you who are selling something will have thought about at some point in the game, right? Now, what we need to do next is take that and then make it into something that's tangible and something that's practical for a photograph, right? So this, again, would probably be best to not pause, but to come back to this activity in your own time, but we'll talk through it together, and we can talk about it in the questions at the end, is this idea of, well, what are you actually going to take photos of, right? And this is an important, it's an important thing, because when we're taking photos or sharing on Instagram and all of this kind of stuff, there is just so many, right? So many that we share. So having some ideas in the bank to come back with can be really helpful. So this particular activity, what we're going to do is just do a mind map, right? We're going to look at the products, the context, and the shot. Now I'm going to flip between these two slides, so don't get too concerned, but I do this all the time for myself, right? Now I've just done a bit of an example here of a hat, right? Goodness knows why I chose hat as a product, but it was a step away from coffee, so I figured that was an improvement. So when we move, we're going to look at the fact that as a business owner, I'm trying to sell a hat. I'm trying to put a hat in the Good Giving Guide. What kind of photos can I use? What kind of photos can I put on Instagram for sharing this? So the first brain dump that I came down with was, okay, so what was the inspiration for making the product? Where is the hat made? Is it something that I make myself personally, or is it made in a different country? And in that country, where is it made? Do you know what I mean? Like who is making it? How is the product packaged? Do you do that yourself? And so it's an interesting way to then break down the contexts that your product shows up in. And in this context, the hat might be also being worn by a customer, because that's kind of how somebody else might engage with it. So even just in that little scenario, there's 4 different ways that you could share an image of your product. Now, that's the context side. That's this part here, right? So the product is the hat. The context is the different contexts or locations that the product can be shot in. So when I do this, I tend to follow that life cycle or the customer journey of the product. So, okay, so, when do they get it? How do they receive it? How do they find it? All of those kind of things. It's just like a checklist in my head that you can go to and write down as many different things that you can think of. Then the next step in our mind map is to think about the actual shot itself. What are the specific photos and props that we can use to actually share that story? So in this case, we're going to go with how the product is packaged. we're going to look at the fact that, okay, I might package them on my desk at home. So there's a scene there, in there and of itself is how I can take a photograph. I could take a photograph, particularly more for social media, of someone or me dropping that package in the post. I could take a photograph of the wrapping that it goes in, or perhaps I do a handwritten thank you card with the product before it gets sent, right? So there's a whole range of different scenarios or scenes that particular photograph, that particular context could be shared through. And then when we break it down again, and this is just purely to make it as easy as possible, right? Because sometimes when we're thinking about this, it can get a little bit overwhelming, but really you already have everything you need to do it. It's about thinking in the way that is going to best express it. So if we're looking at packaging the product, the envelopes, packaging, supplies, desk, pens, that's all there as something that could be on your desk to take that photo of the hat when you're packaging it on your desk. Does that flow make sense? It kind of goes down that pathway of, you know, product, the hat, the context. This is where it, the different places that it could show up, and then the shot could be where the actual specific photo takes place and what props go on in with using that. Does that all make sense? I'll do a double check. Thumbs up. Thank you. All right, we'll just move through. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We're getting some yeses. Okay, cool. So just a quick recap for where we are in this process at the moment, because even so far, we still haven't actually, you know, got out a camera or taken out our phone to think about what photo you're going to be taking. So we're still moving through that planning process. But, you know, like every well, I was going to say every good Capricorn, being the planner that I am, we finding those steady ways to actually, you know, plod your way through the process actually creates a really solid foundation and gives you so much more to work with. So we talked about the intention, right? So that's thinking about the story behind your photograph, your product. So knowing that the haberdashery is from a secondhand, it's got a story behind it. We want people to know that in our example, right? We want to know, we want them to know why what the impact is and what the meaning is behind it. We want to know why we're taking the photos. So we're trying to get people to buy the product, right? I went backwards then. So that's the intention in the story. We want to know why we're taking the photograph. So that's about the having someone buy it, or somebody feel engaged with the service or product online. We want to know what the story is behind it. So what is the history behind the buttons that we're selling, as an example, right? How are we going to share that? Then we've done a mind map look at the specific photographs that we could shoot that actually starts to share that story. So if we, I'm just going to completely off the cuff here. So say, for example, we had the handful of the container of buttons that has been donated and it has a story, right? We're trying to sell this as a little collection. So we know that our intention for this product is to sell it. The photograph is going to go onto Instagram, right? It's showing the kinds of things that we sell. It's not necessarily like a product photo, but we want it to show the kinds of things that we sell. So the story behind it, it could be that you have, what could be, when you're making it up, it's hard to do it on the spot, but you could have some thread around the story, right? Or you could, I'm jumping ahead of myself. The story is that it has been donated. The shot, you could have thread around the actual image of the buttons, because it kind of gives the idea that it's been used, right? You could have an envelope that's been ripped open that shows where the buttons have come out of, for example. You could have, you know, I'm just trying to make this up as I go. You could have it in a secondhand or an older looking jar or vase, so that it doesn't have that brand new, just out of the packet look about it. So there's a few different ways that we could share that story and set that shot. Excuse me. We've got, yeah, there's a lot of buttons come in Vegemite jars or rusty boxes, and that's perfect, right? It's a perfect part of that story about what the history is of where the products come from and how it might be part of what you're selling. Now, you may not resell those buttons in Vegemite jars and rusty boxes, for example, but your shot might have that rusty box in the corner, and then the buttons in the tray or the container or the packaging that you're about to use. So it's just about thinking about where the item is in context of its background and in context of the photograph itself. Now, next, and this is the bit that we haven't actually touched on yet, but it's the final part in this little story. I said story so many times now, is the brand itself, your brand, right? This is the elements of your brand that we need to make sure we share. So the brand story for me, right, for my business, is all about visibility. It's all about expression. It's all about sharing a story and a voice, right? So that's not necessarily specific to this product that I'm sharing with you now. So this workshop or this class, that's not necessarily, you know, if you look at my what do you call it, tagline about being a personal brand coach and photographer, that may not be consistent, right? But by sharing the background about why I'm interested in you being able to share your products and being able to share your impact, and the impact that you want to make through your product, helps you understand where this one product, this workshop, fits in the broader brand that I offer. And I say this because sometimes we can fall into the trap of going, everything has to be exactly the same. So no matter what photo I take, actually, let me rephrase this. There's one of two schools here. We have people who share anything, in the sense of any type of photo, any type of imagery, and there's no consistency to it. Or we have those who share imagery and graphics that are almost identical to each other through everywhere, right? Now, neither of those is, in my opinion, particularly great. We don't want it to be so haphazard that your brand is lost in the variety of different photographs and settings and scenes and colors and styles that you're posting, because there's no consistency in that, which means that we lose some of the power. And through consistency comes trust. And when we want people to buy from us, regardless of whether that's a product or a service, we want them to trust us and our business first. And we do that through consistency. So having like a real haphazard approach is tricky, because it doesn't help keep that consistency. On the other hand, if you've got, and you can see through this presentation slide, right, that some of my core brand colors are this bright pink and yellow. Now, if I had bright pink and yellow as the only colors on things that I offered, it would also become so boring that it loses any impact. So you might know when you see a pink graphic come up that it's mine, but you may not look at it because it's like, it's all the same. It becomes too samey and lacking in personality. So what we want to do is find that middle ground, right? We want to find that place in between where your story is always consistent, right? But the product that you're offering doesn't have to tell the whole story of everything. It just needs to tell a story that is consistent. Can I get a thumbs up again, or an indication that makes sense to folks? It's like Ainsley's examples of the buttons and so forth. So the whole organization may have a certain, Yep. Can I word it another way? I will give it a go. Makes sense. Yep. Excellent. So let's look at it this way. So, and I'll see, Helen, if this helps. So, and I'm just, again, because and I apologize because I don't know the background to everyone's business, but so say, for example, we've got Ainsley and the buttons that have come in a Vegemite jar. Now, through the Nest, I think you said it was called, you're trying to sell products that have a history and that are recycled, I guess, or repurposed, right? And as an organization, you might be doing that. I'm just making guesses here. You might be doing that because of a sense of sustainability, right? You are trying to make an impact around sustainability and this kind of stuff. So your brand story is about sustainability, is about, you know, limiting waste, is about recycling, or it could be around crafting, or it could be around any of those kind of things, right? These buttons on their own, you don't have to tell that whole story when you share a photo of those buttons. You need to have a story that shows your buttons. Sorry, I know it kind of feels a bit funny saying that, but the buttons themselves may not tell the story about sustainability, right? But they might tell the story about being repurposed as a part of that bigger story. Just like when we go back all the way back to that coffee, right? That was in the middle of the campground. And it was an adventure story, right? So that brand, again, I'm just making up guesses now. So that brand may be adventure-focused brand, right? It might talk about, you know, being a thrill seeker or seeking out new lifestyles and all of that kind of stuff, right? And one of its products that it sells is coffee. So the coffee might not on its, so you, let me see that. So you want to place the coffee in the context of the adventure, but it doesn't have to tell the whole story of the adventure or the main brand. Helen, does that make a little bit more sense? It's when I'm kind of making up, not making up, but making guesses about people's intention, it kind of gets a bit harder to do, but I want to make sure that it makes sense. Okay, so let me, just a part of the whole purpose. Yeah, but you want it to be the same purpose. You don't want it to contradict. And this is where we want to have a look. So checking that the photos that we've taken or the photos that we're going to share for our business are consistent. So we look at the colors. Do you know what I mean? So I've got a color palette, as you can, this slide pretty much is my entire color palette. Most people don't have the whole rainbow as part of their palette, and that's okay. But if I were to start putting out, things that were in like really soft pastels in my photos, it might not be consistent. So it might make me go, oh, that's not quite right, right? The mood, I might have a very vibrant, bright mood as part of my brand. And if I put out a product photo or an image that's really dark and shadowy and has a slightly gloomy text feel about it, when we look at the feeling of photos, it might not be consistent with my mood. The story we've talked about, is that part of that bigger story? And 3, the edits or filters. Now, that's going to very much fall into part of the tactical stuff about photographs. But if, again, I've got lots of photographs and everything that I share in my brand is bright and happy, there's lots of light in it, all of that kind of stuff. And then the photo that I edit, like I say before, the editing is really dark and gloomy and shadowy. The edits then also contrast. So it's where there's lack of consistency in how that photograph is presenting my story. Yeah? They're the main things that we want to be looking at. Now, I'll get to it. Yeah, I'll get to it. Okay, so I haven't got, with the time that we're playing in, there's not a lot of time to go through the whole ins and outs of what people's phones are, how people shoot their photos, all of that kind of stuff. So what I've done is I've put together a guide, I guess, and it's 30 photo tips, right? And these are just kind of examples so that you get a bit of an idea. of the kind of tips that are in the guide, right? And some of them are about the background, or about where you're putting people. Some of them are about lighting. Some of them are about the physical use of your phone or camera. Others are about editing, right? So short of, like I say, being able to give everybody answers to all of the different ways that they take photos, I've pulled together this guide so that you can take it with you and basically just have it as a reference tool for when you want to take photos of your products. Now, there's a link here. When I'm able, I will drop it into the chat box. Leanne is also going to share it around so that you can access the document. It's just so that we've got a way of getting that all out to you. Now, at this point, what I wanted to do is check in on my time and see. I would love to, if there's any questions. So 17, yep. Thank you, Leanne. Either taking yourself off mute or typing it into the chat box. Does anybody have any, because I absolutely powered through that material, right? So there's a lot in there, a lot of conceptual stuff. So I just want to make sure that everyone has a chance to, yeah, really let me see. I'm going to take myself off sharing and hopefully come back to myself. Yep. Where's my chat gone? All right. Not a question, but amazing wealth of information. Thank you. Thank you. And that sometimes is the trouble, right? Is when you've got a lot to get out. Does anybody have any particular products that they would like to talk about? Because I think we've got, how much time have we got, Leanne? About 10?
I could probably drop in here.
Yes.
Hello. I've just been putting my face on while listening. So my product is obviously it's care packages. Yep. And I've taken photos of individual items, and that's as far as it's got. The other package photography that I've done is it wrapped up on a pink fluffy rug. Yep. Which is one of the first photos that pops up to kind of really explain that we do packages, not individual items. Yep. So is there another good way of photographing a package? Because the other one that I've done is like a front on all the individual items in a kind of group tier.
Yeah, look, I mean, and it depends on the purpose for the photograph, right? So if it's the main hero image on your website, I would probably try and put more emotion in it than just a straight up product photo. So by that, I would say maybe it's, even if it's staged, because I understand that your situation, your context may not be best to have, you know, real recipients in the moment, but it might be somebody gifting the package, right? You want to try and create, for say a hero image on a website, you want to try and create an emotion or a feeling around it. So putting it in a different context probably would help in that space. If it were, say it's going into the good giving guide, which is not really that kind of product, but say you had a package, somebody had a package that was going in the guide, and you would then definitely want to have, I would try and get a photograph for that kind of thing that's got both the package in the background, right? So everything all wrapped up nicely. And then perhaps one that's got all of the, and in front of it is all of the products. So people can see what's in it. But you've also got the opportunity that you can, you know, you could have an image of somebody using a product. So say it's a hand cream or some sort of cream, right? There's somebody doing that. So each of those products has their own context, right? And then it's an incredibly emotional time that you're dealing with. So there's lots of emotion there that you could potentially be sharing in an appropriate way, right? I'm not actually talking about any sort of exploitative ways, about how that scenario works, because it's the emotion that is going to, and it could be, you might decide that the emotion is uplifting, right? And that's the message that you want to put through all of your branding, is that, you know, supporting, uplifting, nurturing, rather than sad, right? And so that might be the kind of emotion setting in the context that you want to focus on.
Yeah. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Definitely.
I'm trying to read through the content, so just bear with me.
Long message.
That's okay. No, it's good. Our socials are all about the people we aren't trying to gain more customers from. Yes. Okay, so people who want to be anonymous, I mean, photographing people is a completely different context, right? But let's just talk quickly. People who want to be anonymous, you can do, I often have backs of heads, especially if they're interaction with somebody. Hands. I remember doing a shoot once for Stroke Foundation, and some of the clients there that we were working with, they didn't want to be, they were carers of people who've had strokes. And so, you know, the hand on the back of somebody, or the hand holding somebody. Yeah. So it's not necessarily looking at the face, but it's actually expressing the emotion that relates to that. And I think particularly, so you've got a really, like you say, you've got a really interesting mix of that your beneficiary audience is not the same as your paying audience.
That's correct. And our paying audience often doesn't care about the services.
And that's okay. And that's okay. But actually I would, and I mean, I'm sure there's others that have plenty to say about this, but people do buy from people whose value alignment is there, right? So they may not care, it might not be their number one reason why they purchase from you, but that doesn't mean you can't share it, right? In an ethical way. Anytime that we are talking about human beings and interactions, I want to be really, really clear that we're talking about doing this in a non-exploitative way, and in a way that's not very, you know, white saviorism, because that's not what we're about. We're about sharing the story, but not in a way that takes advantage of others. So it's, there's a really clear, for you particularly, I would say, look at the channel that you're putting the image on. That will be one of your core factors.
Okay, groovy. Thank you.
That's okay. I back up to Yvonne has a question about lighting for a number of the photos. Now, lighting is, it depends on who what you're shooting, but most folks, if you could take photos in natural light, that's all you need, right? So my tip is to walk around the house or your office, but you know, at various times in the day, you want to find a house that's really nice, a space that's really nicely lit, but not full sun. So sometimes it's just inside your front door, right? Or just inside a big window where there is lots of light, obviously depending on the time of day, but lots of light, and but it's not harsh light, because that's where you get that, you know, when it looks like it's kind of a bit overexposed and really bright and glary. So you want it just inside doors, just inside windows, and that is a perfect space. So no, you don't need lighting. The only time, and especially here in Australia, like we have so much sunshine during the day, there are definitely people who, you know, if you are in darker climates and you don't get to be at home during working hours, I would say, sure, you can purchase lights, but we've got so much natural light. It's just about finding the right place in your home or in your workspace, and actually then creating a little studio around that. Now, a whole big story, but there's nothing fancy about that. Think white sheets, think white cardboard from Officeworks. Do you know what I mean? That kind of stuff, just to create a little corner. It doesn't have to be expensive or fancy. It's just about trying to create a contained space. And then what goes into that space all depends on the image that you're trying to create.
Lovely. Thanks, Renee.
That's okay. All right, now personalized products like embroidery, heat transfer. Yep. So I would argue, and I don't know, sorry, because it's come up to me as Samsung SMG998B. So please forgive me for not saying your name. Sorry, Sue Ellen, thank you. I would say that have a look at there doesn't have to be the story behind the product if there's too many, but it can be the story behind why you're making them, right? Now, alternatively, it could be the story behind the product in the sense of this is how I made it, right? So say each client is different and you develop a concept and a design according to the client. So the photographs or the story that you're telling could be about what's your process for engaging with the client. Do you know what I mean? Do you have a call? And there could be a photograph of the call. There could be a photograph of you designing it on the computer if it's a print design. It could be a photograph of it printing it if you print yourself. So there's a whole range of things that it doesn't matter that each one is different because the product is roughly the same. So what I would argue though is be very clear on what the brand is of you, and so that you're remaining consistent to that brand. Yeah. How are we doing, Leanne, boss?
All good. All good. That was great. If anybody does have any more questions for Renee, please feel free to, jump on her website, email her, engage her for some branding and personal photos. I highly recommend it. That's assuming you like my photos. If you don't like my photos, then too bad. I like my photos. So, and it was a fun day. It was such a fun day. And again, we brought all that context stuff in, like what is the story I was trying to tell? What are my colors? What poses? And that's for people, but we did it with my notebooks as well. It's like, well, how do we use them and what do we do and what is it that I'm trying to communicate simply with a picture of a notebook? And there were lots of different ones that we took, and you'll see one that you we'll be at 17X tonight, and you see one that leaps off the screen. You go, oh, I like that one, I'm going to use that one. All righty, but thank you so much, Renee. I'm going to email, there is going to be a recording of this. When that's going to happen, because tomorrow's a public holiday, I'm not entirely sure, but I will email around Renee's links and her details and all that sort of stuff. So if you do want to get in touch and ask her any more questions, then please feel free to do so. But if everyone can thank Renee for me, and that would be lovely. Thank you so much. Lovely.